Live thing. Sometimes it works. Oh, there it goes. Now we're live. Give people a minute to tune in here. All righty. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another live stream produced by the First Tuesday Conservatives, hosted by Alpha News. I'm your presenter, Kyle Hooten. Today we're joined by Will Witt of PragerU. You may recognize him from YouTube videos where he goes on the street and interviews people. He also has helped them produce several documentaries, including a recent piece on the Green Movement. Will, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so first, I want to start out just by talking about your man on the street videos, because I think that's where a lot of our viewers may know you from. That's where I recognize you from. And you go out into the street and you ask people questions about politics, and it paints a pretty grim picture. A lot of these people don't really know what they're talking about. They're very left wing. Tell me, being on the street, is it actually as grim as it looks?
We go out on the street. I mean, the main principle of why I go out there and interview people and do man on the street has always been to change people's minds. So when I go out there, I'm trying to change people's minds as well as exposing the left. So like you'll see all these students on these campus interviews that I do. We obviously can't do campus interviews now because of COVID and everything, but before doing these types of interviews, and you know, these students aren't stupid. Most of them aren't stupid. Of course, there are some things that are just absolutely ridiculous. And you're like, okay, that's pretty stupid. But for the most part, they're just misinformed and they've been brainwashed. The mainstream media, Hollywood, their university, it's all telling them the same thing. It's all pushing this leftist agenda on them. So of course, if that's all you're being told, all you're being fed, then you're going to be a leftist. So it's a grim picture in the sense that they have been brainwashed to think this way. But when I'm able to change some of these people's minds and educate them, it is incredibly heartening to know that their minds can be changed, because their leftist convictions go about an inch deep. They're very shallow, and it gives us a lot of hope that there is something we can actually do. It's not set in stone.
Right, and that's something I've always kind of wondered about, is how deep can these convictions really be if they don't seem to have a deep understanding of the issues? What would you say your conversion rate is when you're talking with somebody, when you can actually get them to come around and concede that the right might have a few good points?
You know, it's different. I do a lot of my interviews and people at the end won't even know I'm a conservative, but I've changed their minds on whatever issue that I'm talking about. And I found that to be, you know, way more important than just coming and saying, you know, you need to vote for Trump, or coming with a MAGA hat and telling them that they need to be a Republican now. Like, that's not really the point. To me, more the point is, excuse me, values and ideas. So like bigger picture kind of stuff. If you teach these people the right values and morals, then they can see things going on in their world and it reflects in their entire worldview. And they want to like have a better understanding of the things actually going on around them, instead of just looking at one particular issue or one particular election and saying, okay, I need to be this way. So the conversion rate is good on pretty much every single issue. I'm able to change, I mean, almost everyone's mind except for the few who are very entrenched leftists. But other than that, I mean, even if we don't change their minds, we're educating them on a different perspective.
Absolutely. You know, that's a very good point. And that's something we talk about quite a lot on the show, is the importance of speaking to those underlying values and not just hitting, you know, the campaign talking points. So I'm glad you bring that up. When it comes to education, of course, you're affiliated with PragerU. Our audience, I'm sure, is also familiar with PragerU. How have your numbers been looking lately over there?
Our numbers are looking great. I mean, we're reaching tons of people. I mean, 70% of mine's changed. Most of our audience is under the age of 34. I mean, it's just been awesome. But of course, with social media censorship and everything, there's always times where we put something out and we get suppressed. I mean, just a couple months ago, talking about the hydroxychloroquine stuff, we had our Twitter account locked out. We were suspended off Twitter. Facebook page reach went way down. Instagram page reach went way down. So it's always a constant battle of wondering whether today we're going to post a video and have our account be censored or shadow banned or whatever it might be. And then some days they're really good because we put out something that a lot of people are able to react with. So it's you never know. You never really know.
I've always wondered, when you're behind these large social media accounts, how much communication do you have with the platforms? Like, if Twitter is going to, you know, stop promoting your content, or if your stuff's going to stop showing up in the Instagram feed, do you get a notification, or does it just sort of occur?
It's funny that you mentioned that. We have someone actually at Facebook who we talk to, but in terms of the other social media platforms, we don't really have a rep. But at Facebook, I know that we do. But it's funny, like at Twitter, like we had this video about hydroxychloroquine saying that it could be a potential treatment for COVID-19, and we had talked to doctors and some other stuff like that for the video. And they deleted our account. They suspended our account, and then they said we can only re-put your account up if you delete the video. But it's like when you go and look at our account at that time, Twitter had already deleted the video that we had posted. So it's like they didn't really want us to delete the video. They more wanted us to get on our knees and apologize to them and bow down to them and say, you were right, we're so sorry, we shouldn't have posted this video. I mean, that's what they really want. It's total compliance. It's not that this goes against even their community standards. It's that they want you to have compliance with their agenda. So these social media companies, I mean, we spent a lot of money on advertising and a lot of man hours and things to make our accounts big and make high quality production videos, and just at the drop of a hat and your account's gone, they can delete it just because they want to. And that's a really scary thing. So it is hard to have communication with a lot of these big tech groups, but yeah, that's about it. It's hard to excuse me, it's hard to have communication with them.
It's very difficult, very difficult. Do you have any ambitions to ever move away from the social media platforms? Because I know a lot of conservatives say that we need to make our own Facebook or something like that. Do you think there's any merit to that argument?
I see an app like Parler, and I see that it's doing actually pretty well. I mean, we've gained a couple 100,000 followers on there and get a lot of video views on there. But for me, I've never been of the group of let's make a conservative Facebook. To me, that's always seemed counterintuitive. I mean, I would want to be on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube because that's where the people who disagree with us are. The people who are saying, let's make a conservative Facebook. It's like, yeah, let's all just sit there and agree with each other. That sounds horrible. It's like, I want to be in a place where I can reach people who disagree or aren't educated or don't have their minds made up. Those are the people who I want to reach, not just a bunch of conservatives to get viral content of saying, haha, libtard. It's like, I want stuff that is going to change people's minds, So I see why people would say they want a conservative Facebook or conservative social media because they're sick and tired of being censored. But really, we just need to find better ways to fight back against the censorship and get our ideas out to people who disagree.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. It doesn't do us a whole lot of good to just retreating to new safe havens without actually being able to engage with the left. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
So I realized you've got this recent documentary. It's called The Religion of Green, something like that. Obviously, we've been seeing the negative impacts of green policy as California, your home state, burns. Tell us a little bit about that project.
So Religion of Green is a new short documentary we made. You can check it out, PragerU.com. It's all on there. It's about 15, 20 minutes. And it's essentially exposing the climate elite for what they've done to people in America and the West in general, that they have turned the environmentalism movement into a religion. It's no longer just a set of ideas. It's like, think about something like recycling, where you go and recycle a plastic straw, you throw it in the blue bin, and you do that, and you feel this sense of accomplishment. You know what I mean? Like you've done something good, like you're doing something to help save the planet. And if you see people who have a plastic straw and they throw it in the trash, you're like, oh, why is that person doing that? They're probably a bad person. It's immoral to do that. And that's just a small example. And it goes into a bigger picture of this whole religious extremism when it comes to the green movement. And so we made a documentary kind of exposing that and showing how this fear that people have, this submission that the left wants with this religion, is totally unfounded and just plain wrong and not true. So we went in to expose that.
Absolutely. Where do you think that came from? Because, as long as I've been alive, people have been telling me you got to recycle. It's the right thing to do. And this moral message has just always been around, but it had to have come from somewhere. Were you able to identify that source?
Yeah, it's always been around for me too. I mean, I remember being in elementary school hearing about global warming before I even knew, I couldn't even tell you what a Republican or a Democrat was, but they were shoving global warming and down my throats before all of this, that's just how it was. But it really came about, if you know a famous philosopher, Nietzsche, in the 1800s, he had a famous line that said, God is dead, right? And a lot of atheists look at this and think like this is a celebratory thing, that Nietzsche is coming on and saying, this is great, that religion is dead. That's not what he meant. He was more of a warning that if people abandon Judeo-Christian values, people are still going to need some sort of value system or meaning in their lives. And in my opinion, this is leftism comes in. And so it started with communism in the 1900s, Malthusianism. And after kind of communism was discredited by a lot of people, then the environmental movement came in. So as people move away from God, move away from Judeo-Christian values, they still needed some sort of religion. And we see this not just happening with the climate change movement. I mean, we see this with the Black Lives Matter movement. When we see people going and rioting and protesting in the streets, it's not just that they think their ideas are right. They think they have a moral obligation, a moral responsibility, because it's part of their soul, part of their being, that they have to go and do this. So it's been a long time in the making, and it's festered itself for generations to get to the point that it is.
And I'm so glad you bring up Nietzsche, because bringing up the philosophical aspect of this circles it right back to the campus aspect. A lot of people hear that, college campuses are liberal, people are getting indoctrinated on the college campuses, but they don't really realize why. And it's that kind of philosophy that you just talked about, that Nietzsche philosophy, that nihilism that these students are fed in their early years of college. And then they end up adopting Marxist ideas to fill the void that's been left after their professors told them that there is no objective morality, there is nothing higher than the human being. They naturally fall into these far left principles. So I'm glad that's something that we could bring up. When it comes to the climate in your documentary, what do you think the solution is? Because I know that a lot of people accuse conservatives of not having a climate solution. I think that's totally false. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Michael Schellenberger, who I worked with a lot on the documentary, has a great new book that came out, Apocalypse Never. He's actually in the documentary, but he has a lot of answers for this in there. I definitely recommend you guys check it out. But for the shorter answer, the free market is definitely the solution to climate problems. I'm of the camp of, I do think the climate is changing, and I do think that humans have a role to play. I don't know why there are so many conservatives out there who say that there's no chance that humans can have any impact on the earth. Of course we can have an impact on the earth. We pollute, we are killing a lot of animals. These are bigger environmental concerns than the end of the world. But I think that we need to look to the free market as a solution. The free market are going to be the best tools that we have to stop climate change. You have Gavin Newsom coming and saying, we want to ban ban gas-powered cars by the year 2035. He just said this. And it's like, that is a horrible idea. What a terrible idea. They didn't invent the first automobile by banning the horse and buggy, right? Like, the free market developed the first car because it was something that made a lot of sense, and it was able to be made due to technological advancement. You're not going to have any technological advancements to make these cars greener or make them better for the environment by banning them, by forcing some solution. It's the same thing with having renewable energies. With renewable energies coming, wind and solar, and saying we have to put these in, even though they're not ready, they're not cost effective, they take up too much land, they kill wildlife, they're bad for the environment, they take so much stuff to mine and actually transport them places, but they want to put them in anyway, which is a totally wrong thing to do. In terms of energy, we need to be looking towards nuclear energy and natural gas. These are the best solutions for actually solving. I mean, energy is already solved in America, but to even making it better and cleaner, nuclear energy is by far the best way to go.
You guys have had Alex Epstein on PragerU before, right?
He was in the documentary as well. We interviewed him for the documentary, so he's great.
We had Mr. Epstein on our show about 2 weeks ago or so, and he echoed a lot of those same arguments. Very strong position to take. I definitely agree with that. How has the reception to this documentary been? It released about a week ago, you said?
Yeah, week and a half ago. It's been great. I mean, people have absolutely loved it. We actually did a live premiere here in Los Angeles at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church, because really the churches that are conservative are really the only places you can do something like this, and we had like 2,000 people come. It was awesome, just an amazing event, and the reception has just been awesome. Having people's minds wake up to this fact. You don't realize it at the moment when you're seeing these lies about climate change or BLM or any of these leftist things. You think like, oh, it's just lies, or how could anyone believe this? And it's like, well, they've made people afraid, and they've turned it into like their being, like it's part of your moral being to agree with these causes. Like when people, like you ask someone on the left, like, who are you as a person? They'll be like, I support trans lives, like that's like their being. That's like who they are as a person, which is crazy to me that they've taken that like so far. So when you see this documentary, I think it's really changed a lot of people's minds and given them like the insidious design of this whole movement.
Absolutely. Where can our viewers go find that documentary? Is that going to be on the PragerU website probably?
Yeah, go to PragerU.com. You can also find it on my social media at the Will Witt, and PragerU social media at PragerU. It's all over. We're putting it everywhere. But PragerU.com will be your best bet for finding it.
Absolutely. A lot of people are familiar with PragerU, shorter content. You see it all the time on YouTube. It comes across the Facebook timeline pretty often. But I feel like a lot of people aren't as aware of these long-term or long-form documentaries that you guys make. What's next? What projects are you considering tackling in the future?
Yeah, definitely getting more into the documentary space. I mean, you see people like Vice and now this who are making, more of these kind of shorter documentaries type of projects, and they're doing it very well. I mean, I think the ones that Vice does, despite not agreeing with all of them, they're very well done. They're well produced, and they look great, and they get millions and millions of views. And so we as PragerU, there hasn't been anyone really doing that in the conservative space, making these social media type of documentaries that are reaching just a massive audience. So the first one we made was called Fleeing California, which got millions and millions of views, which was all about why people are fleeing California and other blue states for red states like Texas. And it absolutely blew up, which was awesome. And then the next one I think we're going to work on is actually, despite us talking about this beforehand, is somewhat about social media censorship and about the negative effects that social media is having on people in the sense of the political world. So that's what I think we're moving forward on. Then we got a lot of other ones planned down the future, but you know, you take them as they come. It's hard being just me and a very other small team working on these to make it happen.
You know, you're right. The Vice documentaries are very impactful. I grew up watching Vice documentaries, and I think a lot of people are sort of aware the left can put out content like that. But on the right, we've got you, a handful of other people, and not that many other, you know, individuals and teams working on this kind of content. Why do you think we're lagging so far behind in that space?
I think it's the same thing with conservatives in the climate change movement. Like, a lot of conservatives won't even talk about climate change or give a solution or anything because they feel so defeated. You know, the left are the people who care about the environment. If you care about the environment, like I've put out climate change stuff, or I put out this documentary, and I've had other conservatives, you know, they've called me a hippie. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you know, that's how it goes. And it's like, we feel like we've lost on this. So there's something like a short documentary, and conservatives are just like, you know, we're not really in that space. Let's make another spreadsheet about why taxes should be lower. It's like, you know, these stupid things that Republicans and conservatives have been doing for so long that haven't won any hearts and minds. They don't really have a clear vision of what they want to do. And so we wanted to make this to get into that space because we see how powerful of a medium it can be. And so we hope that, you know, that we're not just the only ones making things like this, and a lot of other people with audiences and the means to make it can start doing it as well.
Is that the long-term goal of PragerU, to become sort of a cultural force like a lot of these left-wing outlets are?
Yeah, I mean, being a digital media company, we've only grown and grown since we started about 6 years ago. And I've been with PragerU for about 3.5 of those years. And I mean, when I started, it was just the 5-minute videos, the fireside chat with Dennis Prager sometimes, and then eventually my videos. And those were like the only 3 things we really did. And our social media presence was kind of smaller. And now we've kind of just exploded into the Candace Owens show and book club and Americanos and all these different shows. And then I'm doing so many other things. It's like, it's just been crazy with the amount of stuff that we've done. I mean, what we would like to do would be, not exactly because we won't have cuties on our platform, but like a conservative type of Netflix a little bit, you know, where we just have this huge selection of shows and bringing in the best minds and the best people to have all this different content for people to watch. That's really the plan.
I've always wondered why there aren't more conservatives in entertainment media as well. And as you're sort of talking about staging this conservative media takeover, maybe you could speak to that a little bit also. Is that something that would eventually, you know, be down the tunnel, is having not overtly political, but conservative leaning entertainment content?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just hard. I mean, I just don't think conservative entertainment sells. Like when you know, and that's just the nature, that's just human nature, to be honest. If you have a woman who's all covered up and no one's swearing and there's no, you know, violence, these things are deemed more, you know, it's not as sexy for people to want to watch, and that sucks. But that's, you know, kind of the same thing with being a Christian. It's like it's a lonely path, and a lot of people are going to shame you and disagree with you and not be with you while you walk down this path, but you have to do it anyway and push against it. So I mean, to people in entertainment who are conservative, I think there are actually a lot more than we think, but they're just too scared to actually speak out and say something. You know, I live here in Hollywood, California, like right in the thick of it. I used to live right on the boulevard. Now I'm a little bit away. But I mean, I've met tons of actors and actresses, big Hollywood ones too. And, you know, lots of them are conservative and they just don't come out and say it, you know, they just keep it to themselves. So I just think that a lot more need to be more vocal and actually say what they believe. And I think we can make the changes that we need.
Absolutely. For those of our viewers who are just tuning in, we're here with Will Witt from Prager University. I've got to ask you, you've got contact with Dennis Prager, a number of other sort of notable conservative figures in your job. How are you guys feeling about the election? What's the prediction when it comes to November 3rd?
Yeah, PragerU itself is a nonprofit, so can't
Sure.
speak specifically on as PragerU coming
Yeah.
on and saying. But in terms of myself, I mean, I think Trump is going to win. I don't really see any need to be worried. I mean, I was one of the people in 2015 who, as soon as Trump announced and started saying some of the things that he did, I was a Trump supporter from day one of him announcing, and I thought he was going to win then, even though everyone said he wasn't. So I think the people who support him are really going to come out. I'm not so worried about this election. I'm more worried about the next election. And I'm worried about the smaller elections, which isn't the presidency, but there's a lot of, other state elections happening at the same time and things that are a lot more troubling than what's going on with the presidency. I think we'll be fine there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's an important point. It's funny how many of our guests have brought up these local elections. And I think this is something that our Minneapolis viewers are intimately familiar with, is the impact that these local politicians can have on your city, whether they're defunding the police or enabling rioters. So I'm glad you echoed that as well. One thing I've got to ask about is this new Gravel Institute or something like this. I guess they're launching the anti-PragerU. I've seen a lot of left-wing outlets touting it as, the solution to Prager University. What are your thoughts on this group?
Yeah, I don't know if it's Gravel or Gravel. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but they got the guy from Archer, H. Sean Benjamin. He's also the voice in Bob's Burgers, to come and voice their first video. Basically, it's almost like watching that video is almost like a flex for PragerU, because in it they're like, PragerU is the best and they're reaching all these people and we have to stop it. And it's funny because they're like, oh, PragerU's brainwashing people, while at the same time the left is brainwashing, people all over the country, at universities and Hollywood and the media. So it's just funny, but I'm really not too worried about it. They had a little bit of a good start off the gate, not gonna lie, and they got a ton of attention and they handled things well. I thought, they handled them like the left would, I would say, but they handled it well for how they would handle it. And, we'll see. I'm not too worried about it. I think it'll be fun to have some more competition. That's a free market. So if people want to watch Gravel Institute videos, they can. If they want to watch PragerU videos, they can. And I think that when people put us two side by side, look at our videos and our values versus theirs, it's going to be a pretty easy decision to choose which one you would want to follow to make your own life better.
And this is something you never hear coming from the left. You never hear this open endorsement of a free contest of ideas. And I think that's why, PragerU comes out on top morally in this kind of a conflict. I've got to ask, how many millions of views are you guys getting every month now?
Each month, I couldn't tell you. Right now, we just reached about 4 billion views, lifetime views on our videos. And my videos alone have reached about 500 million. So, it's just been incredible. It's absolutely incredible to get that many views. It's like you can't even quantify it at that point. Like about maybe 9 months to a year ago, we hit 3 billion views. And now we're at 4 billion views. And it's like, I can't even tell the difference. It's like, it's just another number because it's so many. I have no idea what that even means anymore. So, but it is incredible. Like when you actually think about it, just how many people that is watching the videos, changing their minds. It's truly humbling and amazing experience to have. I dropped out of college 3 years ago, go work for PragerU. Never thought I'd be having the impact like that I have now. So
yeah, fantastic. I've always gotten the impression that you're a relatively lean organization. Is that true? Yeah, don't have that many staff.
Yeah, I think we're at just about 50 employees. So we're a pretty small organization. When I started out, it was 15 employees, something like that. So it's really grown in just a short amount of time, but, small growth to just a little bit bigger growth. But, we work very well as a team. Everyone there is incredibly talented and smart, and we just get a lot done in a short amount of time. When you're working against the left with how big they are, you really have to work hard with what you got, as a smaller organization. So we're working hard even with our limited resources.
Well, and it seems like you're doing a pretty good job of it. You've got 50 people getting billions of views. That's more views per employee than most left-wing outlets, I would dare to guess. That's fantastic. If our people want to keep up with you, keep up with PragerU, keep up with the content in general, where should they look?
Yeah, definitely. You can follow me, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at the Will Witt, all right, on there. PragerU is the same, but at PragerU. And then PragerU.com for any resources, any videos. We have a lot of stuff on there. We just launched a new program, Prep, for teachers, educators, and parents to go and look at. A lot of other great shows that are on there. So go to PragerU.com, then follow me and PragerU on social media.
Fantastic. Anything you want to leave us with that we haven't covered yet?
Last thing I can say, guys, is that you can never sacrifice your values. There's so many people out there trying to push you in one direction or try and silence you and shame you. Conservatives for too long have had this stigma around us saying, oh, if I come out as a conservative, everyone's going to hate me, or I'm going to get in trouble for saying I'm a conservative. It's like you have to stop that mindset. Stop that mindset, push with what you want, say how you actually believe, and I guarantee you your life will be better off for it. When you cower in fear and let these people dominate us, then everything continues to get worse. The media, Hollywood, your university, you have to be the person to stand up. So I just want to leave you guys with that and just remind you that it is so incredibly important that you actually do get out there and stand up for what you believe in.
Absolutely. I'll second that one entirely. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, just one announcement before we shut down the stream. Tuesday, October the 6th at 2:10 p.m., we're going to have Jason Lewis on. This is something that I think is going to be very interesting for our Minnesota audience. So come back again. That is 2:10 tomorrow. We'll be on with Jason Lewis. Thanks for tuning in, guys.